Voters will head to the polls this coming Saturday for the primary election in South Carolina. But the field of Republican presidential candidates left standing has now winnowed to 5. For Jon Huntsman, today marked the end of the campaign trail. The former Utah governor and U.S. ambassador to China announced his intentions in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Today, I am suspending my campaign for the presidency. I believe it is now time for our party to unite around the candidate best equipped to defeat Barack Obama. Despite our differences and the space between us on some of the issues, I believe that candidate is Governor Mitt Romney.
Romney did not join Huntsman at the event. Instead, the former Massachusetts governor released a statement shortly after the endorsement. In it, he said, "I salute Jon Huntsman and his wife, Mary Kay. Jon ran a spirited campaign based on unity, not division, and love of country. I appreciate his friendship and support." The Reuters Ipsos poll released over the weekend showed Romney holding a 20-point lead in South Carolina. Rick Santorum and Ron Paul were tied for second, followed by Newt Gingrich and Rick Perry. Other polls show Romney with a slimmer lead. Huntsman had been running last before his withdrawal today. He urged the remaining candidates to stop attacking each other.
At its core, the Republican Party is a party of ideas. But the current toxic form of our political discourse does not help our cause.
But that advice may not take. Santorum complained today that a pro-Romney political action committee is airing ads that distort his record on voting rights for felons.
Maybe his super PAC should redo the ad and criticize Governor Romney for being soft on felons because, in fact, his position on felon voting was weaker than mine.
The former Pennsylvania senator was pressing to emerge as the lead alternative to Romney. He got a boost this weekend when he won the support of evangelical leaders who gathered in Texas. Gingrich, meanwhile, played up the notion that he is the conservative answer to Romney during a Sunday appearance on CBS.
I think it's very hard for him to differentiate Romney care from Obamacare. It's very hard for him to differentiate appointing liberal judges, which he did when he was the governor of Massachusetts. I mean, these are things that are going to come up. And I think for the conservative movement, it makes it more difficult, frankly. And that's why I think here in South Carolina, I'm probably going to win next Saturday, because as a Georgia Reagan conservative, I fit much more comfortably with the average South Carolina Republican.
Meanwhile, Texas Governor Rick Perry continued looking for votes in South Carolina, including at this event in Myrtle Beach.
I'm the one person on that stage who is an outsider. I'm the one person on that stage who has a record of 11 years worth of operating a major entity and working in the same environment, basically, with Democrats and Republicans and been successful at it. I'm the one individual who has been a consistent social and physical conservative for my entire life.
Texas Congressman Ron Paul also campaigned in South Carolina today.
One thing that I think our federal government needs to do, I'm running for a federal office to be President of the United States, and my position on the spending is the first year to cut $1 trillion out of the budget.
All 5 Republican contenders meet tonight for the first of 2 debates this week, leading up to the South Carolina primary on Saturday. For more on the campaign and what to watch for in tonight's debate, we're joined by Christina Bellantoni, political editor at the NewsHour, and Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today. It's good to have you both with us. Susan, I'm going to start with you. Why did Huntsman get out so soon after he said he was going to stay in, and on the day he got this big state newspaper endorsement in South Carolina?
Well, in fact, the state where he devoted all his resources, New Hampshire, only came in third and not even a close third. So it was not, he did not really get propelled to South Carolina in the way he'd hoped to. And, if you look at the national polls and the state polls, he never got out of single digits. I think, he's conservative in policy but moderate in tone, and that was really out of sync with Republicans who are so mad at Barack Obama, so determined to defeat him. He just never made his case with Republican voters.
But was this, Christina, was this an abrupt decision on his part, or had this been building?
Well, this was sort of building over the weekend. I mean, he made a big point to say he had a ticket to ride out of New Hampshire, but it was pretty clear looking at a lot of the numbers and where his support was that was not going to translate to a win in South Carolina, and probably not going to do anything in Florida either. So I think he talked it over with his family. His advisor said he sort of made the final decision yesterday. And I think that it's very, something like this, it just takes time to sort of come to the decision.
What would you add to what Susan said about why his candidacy didn't take off?
Well, one thing that's very interesting, the Obama campaign made very clear that they were concerned about his candidacy. They felt like he's somebody who could appeal to those moderates and independents that are sort of in the middle and are telling, pollsters that they aren't happy with the direction the country is going. So that's where he had a lot of his appeal, but that's not what Republican primary voters seemed to be looking for at this point.
So, Susan, he endorsed Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney didn't even bother to show up for this endorsement. How much difference, if any, does it make?
I don't think it makes difference in that he's transferring support to Mitt Romney, because he doesn't really. But I do think it feeds this perception that Mitt Romney is now the inevitable nominee, that the party establishment is coalescing behind it. And we certainly see that in national polls. In the Gallup poll today, Romney up to 37%. Historically, the candidate who leads, the Republican candidate who leads after New Hampshire, has invariably gotten the nomination. So it would defy history for someone else to get the nomination, not Mitt Romney at this point.
So it's not a matter of votes, it's just a matter of imprimatur.
It's a matter of the party, with the exception of Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum and Rick Perry, the party as a whole seems to be coming together on Mitt Romney. And even Republicans who are not thrilled with the idea of Mitt Romney as a nominee find him acceptable as a nominee. And that's one of the things that makes it hard to knock him off path here.
And speaking, Christine, of Republicans not thrilled with Mitt Romney, there was this gathering over the weekend in Texas of evangelicals, Christian conservatives. Should we be more focused on the fact that it took them 3 ballots to get to saying we like Rick Santorum more than anybody else, or on the fact that they did agree on?
Yeah, I've talked to several evangelical leaders today, and some of them were even downplaying that there was any consensus out of this. They did come to an agreement on Rick Santorum, but it was not unanimous, and some of the Gingrich supporters have been crying foul, suggesting that perhaps there was a Catholic group that was trying to influence that vote. And I think that the Romney people are really not talking about this. They're suggesting, look, we're still strong. A lot of these people found us acceptable. And in fact, I talked to a senior vice president with Focus on the Family, which does not endorse, and they didn't attend the meeting. They said, absolutely, we're seeing social conservatives find him acceptable. They can deal with him as the nominee. But they did stress that they believe that some evangelicals are still uncomfortable with his Mormon faith. And so that's something that they said he's going to have to address if he's going to want to deliver that vote in the general election.
Susan, does an event like this weekend meeting in Texas play into the campaign in a serious way?
Well, I think it could have if it had been a little earlier. This campaign path is pretty well set now. Also, if they had managed to winnow the field of social conservatives vying for that vote, if they, for instance, they had said, we're for Rick Santorum and we're calling on Gingrich and Perry to get out of the race, that might have had some influence, but they didn't do that. And among Christian evangelicals, you find some significant support for Newt Gingrich. Actually, the candidate in New Hampshire who got the most votes from evangelical and born-again Christians was Mitt Romney, who got about 1/3 of their votes, more than Rick Santorum.
Which is a part of the story that's been overlooked.
Yeah, and you're not seeing whatever this group ends up doing, it's not translated to anything in South Carolina yet. You haven't seen them put anything on the airwaves. You're going to have a few things here and there. Gary Bauer, who already has endorsed Santorum, is going to do some radio ads, but you're not really seeing a grassroots effort. And I think that that's where this group, if they wanted to have some influence, they could, and they're not doing it yet.
Susan, the debate tonight, what should we look for? Yet another, is this 18 or 88?
It seems like 88. It's 16, more than we've ever had before in primaries. I think look for a couple things. One, does Mitt Romney make a mistake? He's been pretty steady. He made one error with the I'll bet you $10,000. That was probably a few debates ago. But he's been pretty steady in debates. He needs to get through this debate, the debate on Thursday night, unscathed. I think also look for battles between Gingrich and Santorum, because once again, you see a battle to be the alternative to Romney that's not yet settled. And so do Gingrich and Santorum focus their fire on Mitt Romney, or do they shoot at each other?
And this is the first time we're down to 5, Christina. So the arguments could be sharper tonight.
Sharper,
the candidates will have more time.
More time. I think that will make a big difference. And you saw, actually, it reminds me a little bit of what the Democrats went through in 2008. Once they got to that South Carolina contest, there were just 3 of them. They really went after one another. This was where the attacks got very sharp. But they're going to have another chance on Thursday night to sort of hone those attacks. But really, there are just a few days left here, and the candidates, it appears, will probably train their sights on Romney.
Susan, on the one hand, it is late in the process for this group to meet in Texas. On the other hand, people around the rest of the country are saying, wait a minute, it's almost over, and it's just January the 15th or the 21st by the time South Carolina votes. What is it that American voters, Republicans, should be thinking, should be looking for in the coming weeks in this campaign?
Well, we say it's going to be over, that Romney could be the presumptive nominee after 3 weeks after the first contest. That seems extraordinary. But, we should keep in mind that under the new rules that Republicans have, no one will mathematically clinch a nomination until at least April. So there's still time for there to be some kind of unexpected event that shuffles the deck. And we shouldn't forget that. But that's the math. If you talk about the momentum seems to all be behind Mitt Romney at this point.
Just quickly, Ron Paul is still
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
campaign.
You will hear Ron Paul discuss that math, and that's one reason why he's organizing in these caucus states. He's trying to gather as many delegates as he can to be able to say, I have a bit of a mandate here. I have this portion of the Republican Party, and who knows what will actually happen of that, but that will prevent it from feeling like it's completely over.
Well, we'll all be watching tonight's debate and the one on Thursday, and we'll be talking to the two of you again. Thank you, Susan Page, Christina Bellantoni. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.